Now, during our research, I'd read somewhere that you had made a very interesting choice when it came to the ship's hull color, which moved away from the usual Klingon color scheme to something that you said spoke more to the Federation influence due to the Klingon Federation alliance. So, can you tell us a little bit about that decision?
It was just a very lightweight kind of decision to make the hull coatings, let's say, halfway between the super dark bird of prey color and the Galaxy class. Okay, an indication that maybe it was a slightly more friendly Klingon Empire that we might be dealing with. I tried to spec out a sort of a middle value blue-green. Now, today, I imagine that any Klingon commander, at the construction yard, is going to say, "Give me the original, hull coating, or I'll kill you."
I don't want mint candy green. Speaking of which, you have a model of the Vorcha there, and your shirt is pretty much the exact same hull color.
That's right.
Very cool.
That's what I decided this morning.
So one truly unique thing about this ship is the Destructor pod at the top rear of the ship. You said previously that maybe this could detach and act as a sort of scout ship of sorts. Was this going to be an official thing or something you would have added if you're allowed to? Basically, talk us through your thoughts on this pod and what it can do and not do and things.
In the original battle cruiser, there was an elevated area which looked like it contained some radiator elements, some other kind of let's say armored tank kind of styling. When I did up the ink drawing and the blueprints for the attack cruiser, I thought that possibly this raised platform on the back, which has I think that there's if we can see this here, there's this tiny little central piece, which I would imagine could be a disruptor array, an aft firing disruptor. There are disruptors painted in yellow, which were very definitely called out on the blueprints. The big triangular piece on the back could be an ejectable unit. In the Negvar, in the ship to come after this, I called it a daughter craft. Right. So I think by the time, and this is ancient history up here, by the time the Negvar came around, I think I started thinking more about, pieces and parts that could detach or could be swapped out with other pieces. Now from a production standpoint, no, we probably would never get to see that on screen. It's all part of the little techie backstory.
Would you say then that this pod is in essence, or could be, the Constitution style source separation? It has explosive pods, maybe it's a lifeboat, as opposed to Negvar, which has Enterprise D style separation it can reattach. Or would you say it's closer to maybe the Nebula class, which has detachable pods, so maybe this pod can just be taken off and add a far stronger weapons pod at the back or other sorts? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe more like the Nebula. Lots of sensors, maybe maybe a little tiny disruptor array in the back. With the Klingons, as I wrote about in the Haynes manual for the Bird of Prey, the whole idea of Klingons and lifeboats don't really go together.
Yeah.
There are very specific conditions under which a Klingon will abandon his spacecraft.
I got to jump in here too, because we recently did an episode on saucer separation, and as part of that, it was also boom separation for the Klingon D7s and whatnot from Starfleet battles. And a lot of people have said the same thing, that they don't think the Klingons would necessarily do that. But our thinking was, well, if there's a warp core breach, where's the honor in dying because of a simple malfunction? You want to save your officers at least.
Of course.
So yeah, I think there's possibility for that kind of thing for the Klingons. Not for dishonorable running away, but for just everyday mistake.
Yes, if there's nothing else you can do, yes, jump in the escape pod or jump into a section that's detachable, and live to fight another day. Sure.
But just running back around then, do you think then this is in your headcanon anywhere, a removable pod that there would have been Vorcha variants with other pods around for specialized duties?
Oh, sure. Yeah, why not? You know, it's a big Klingon sandbox. Why not?
Something else you did to distinguish the ship from former Klingon designs was they had the forked detail in the front, which you said would be a new style of weapon. I'd love to hear more about that thought process. And it's worth mentioning here, too, that a lot of people have pointed out it's very similar to the Galore's aft section detail. So just talk us through that detail a little bit and what that's all about, that new weapon.
The fork design on the main disruptor in the front, I have no problem admitting that I derived it from a number of giant anime battleships. You know, where you have, you know, where there's energy coursing between the forks, and then the big blast comes out. You know, Macross had it, Yamato had it.
Right.
You know, it's just wonderful to see what some of these anime spaceships have done with the big honking energy weapons. So yeah, I put a fork up in the front. I also put the central emitter for the cannon here. Well, as long as I got this here, you know, the forked section can you know, you can have an energy buildup in there, and this disruptor emitter right in the middle. That's you know, that's where the plasma comes out. You know, you could probably form it into bolts, beams, break it up into any number of interesting blasts. Now, as far as the Cardassian Galore class is concerned, to my way of thinking, the Cardassians stole the technology.
Ooh.
And added it to the cruiser.
So does the Galore have a rear weapon that does the same kind of thing then? Is that a weapon on the Galore class?
On the Galore class, there is an aft stinger that you know, I think they stole it from the Klingons.
You know, we've got both models from DS9, the Vorcha, sorry, and the Galore, and if you look at them side by side, the shapes are familiar, but only in the sense that it's a simple pincer. All the angles are different, lengths are different. Like, it is a distinctly different shape. And I always thought they were closer than they were. And a lot of people who just look at it from, you know, seeing on the show 10 years ago say, oh, obviously you just stole the parts, but they are distinctly different. So they are more different than I thought. But out of interest, how powerful did you envision this front disruptor being? When you designed the ship, obviously to go sort of toe-to-toe with the Galaxy, did you think it could even take out a Galaxy class with that disruptor?
The capabilities of these weapons are determined by the visual effects department.
And the scripting.
You know, I think under the right circumstances, though, you know, if a Galaxy class, you know, if their defensive shields were degraded, okay, a nice tight bolt, you know, from one of these fork disruptors, I think could you know, punch a nice hole in the ship. Sometimes with weapon capabilities, you know, I kind of liken it to people doing role-playing games where, you know, okay, you know, you shake the dice, 5. Okay, what does 5 mean on the damage scale? You know, I really never put that much thought into what these weapons, you know, could do. You know, and a lot of times it comes down to you know, individual captains' tactics. What's the battle situation like?
Are you going to reroute life support or not? I mean, you know.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so you really can't play with it and. And try to think of one desperate blast from the plasma emitter. Do you risk, you know, blowing your entire plasma supply on one shot, or do you kind of maybe cut it back into, you know, 3 or 4 different bursts?
That's interesting too, because I do play Starfleet Battles. I got to put Starfleet Battles in here again. Sorry, Samuel. But there's things like high energy turns where you turn your ship like 180 degrees to fire at an enemy behind you, but you have to roll for breakdown. And if your ship breaks down, you start to tumble, you lose systems for a minute or two. So yeah, I like that if we could put all the power into this thing to totally cut through a Galaxy class, but we might lose all of our systems in the process. So I like that.
That's right.
Now I had read too in the research that part also might be ejectable, and that anyone aboard it, the Disruptor cruise, would be going to Sto-vo-kor if that was the case. You had said something like that. So tell us a little bit more about the ejectable aspect of that. Could it be like hurled at a ship as part of a tactic? Or
you could dig deeper and deeper into the weapons tech and maybe set the thing to explode on contact. You know, so yes, you eject it. Maybe it's got its own, small propulsion system. Probably just impulse. Okay, warp is warp takes 1,000,000 times more energy than impulse. But the thing could turn into a giant bomb. This particular weapons pod, maybe the rest of the ship is in horrible distress, and you can use this thing as a lifeboat.
I've seen some sketches that you did early on, alternate designs of this front section. Could you also envision, just like this aft section, that if this is removable, that there could be variants with other things there? Maybe there could be torpedo pod as opposed to a destructor pod. Do you really see the core as just being this front bit, and these bits are interchangeable?
Yeah, I did a couple of alternate head designs. In retrospect, I don't like the alternates. I really like what I did originally, and I'm sticking with that one.
I think it is more bold than having, because I saw them and they were more similar to the Katinga. I mean, this is definitely more of an aggressive out. I mean, the whole thing feels more outstretched than the Katinga 7. But do you think, though, back to the universe, this could be a replaceable pod for other style of weapons and things if it is a dedicated weapons area?
Oh, it could be, sure. I mean, whatever Klingon construction yard is building, variants on the Vorcha, or doing yard upgrades and things. I can very definitely see other designed pods, and also maybe other designs for the aft wedge, and maybe other designs for the bridge area.
So there could be a scientific version of the Vorcha that has sensor pods on the back and the front. Different bridge module.
Yes, Klingons do science too.
That's for the disgraced captains, I guess.
So we've already talked about the Vorcha in relation to some other ships a little bit. But did you try and incorporate any specific or very subtle design cues from the previous Klingon ships in your design?
Again, I was really trying to follow some of the shapes and proportions from Matt Jeffrey's, original battlecruiser, especially the nacelles. There are certain shapes, the sides, that little aft pinch that opens up again. Tip of the hat to Matt. The original battlecruiser, the main body of it, kind of flared forward. With mine, I made more of a wing kind of a shape that, here, I'll use mine too. You have this wing shape here that smoothly pinches forward into the longer neck. So the basics are there, like we've talked about with other ships. Staying consistent within a culture's style, I think, is a real hallmark of Star Trek.
In our full episode, we talked about the engines and the fact this is the first one to actually include glowing basards, and we saw that in universe there had been a reason that the Federation and the Klingons had sort of started sharing a bit of technology, and that's why we'll talk about to make that jump and was a specific mandate, because that's a hell of a leap for Klingons as well.
Yeah, I mean, the in-flight collectors, yes, if that was a bit of technology transfer between Starfleet and the Klingons, I think that's just one element, aside from the paint color, that's one element that you can see that, okay, well, the Klingons maybe didn't have that before. What's up? Let's say if there was a new Klingon design post Voyager, I might not put the basards in. Go back to a more traditional Klingon set of engineering rules.
But were the actual basards a mandate from the production team, or something you decided to add in the decision making process?
I put those in. Again, from a production standpoint, on a miniature, yes, it's always cool to have something glowing. Most of the color things that I do on a miniature are, to give a little bit of visual texture. In a lot of cases, it's just to add a little tiny bit of a contrast.
So what was it like seeing your final design appear on screen, the first new Klingon ship in the next generation, as it were? And then what was it like seeing her fly around and kicking ass as a CG version in Deep Space Nine in those space battles? Did you ever think that the Vorcha could kick so much ass?
Well, it was a very, very big ship and very capable, and yeah, it was just a hoot to see it as a finished miniature. and to see it on the screen. But the real giggly part for me was to have AMT send me, a copy of the plastic kit. It's like, I've never had a design turned into a kit before.
That's cool.
This is really cool.
Did you build your model kit at all?
I built one a long time ago, back in the 90s.
So, what has the fan reaction been to this ship over the years? And what have you heard about the design?
Oh, I think the fans like the ship. The comments that I've gotten are nothing but positive. So I think if there's one thing I would have liked to have done with this ship after it was finished, was to make the neck maybe a little bit longer. In some angles, I think it looks a little bit stubby. So
well, how much longer? Because I'll do this in post, like 5%, 10%, like sort of how much are we talking? Like a little bit, a lot of bit, giraffe length. I mean, little bit.
I would say at least the length of the weapons pod.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And maybe broaden out the base of the neck a little bit.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of things to do. I'm a big fan of just mentally of what could happen post Voyager. Yes, we've seen a lot of examples of things that have happened pre-TOS now, and we're going to see more, evidently. I would like to see things that we don't have any information on yet. I think that's a more wide open sandbox.
Would you be excited to do like a Haynes manual for this ship and flesh out the whole modular aspects of it that could have sensor pods and that kind of stuff?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Awesome. It would not be difficult to do. It would take a lot of work. What went into the Bird of Prey manual, a lot of the same things could go into a manual covering Vorcha, where, we would have to gather together a lot of the set photography, let's say clips from the visual effects, or creating new views with CGI. I mean, it's all doable, and a lot of CG rendering of internal components, the internal layout. I don't know what the reactor room looks like in this ship. Now, working on the Bird of Prey manual, I had no idea when I started that one either, but it developed. Again, using a lot of the aspects of the Klingon society that we sort of understood, drove a lot of that internal design. I can do the same thing with the Vorcha. I mean, that, maybe, if 2 reactors is good, 3 might be terrific.
Exactly.
So, last of all, Rick, what is your favourite and least favourite thing about the design? I've already made a brief explanation about what you would change to, say, have a refit or an upgrade. But is there any other thoughts you can have on a refit version?
My most favorite aspect of this ship really is the overall shape of it. If I had to look at any one little detail, I think I like the nacelles a lot. If there's something I would not like and want to change. I'm looking at this model, I think it would be lengthening the neck and maybe doing some subtle changes on the weapon pod.
Okay, well that's it. Always great to hear from the designers and get their thoughts on early design ideas. Both Samuel and myself would of course like to thank you, Rick, for joining us here again today. I think it's now time to partake in some blood wine and perhaps sing songs of Klingon design, glory, and victory.
Excellent. Yeah. Had a great time. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. It's always a pleasure to have you on, and you're always very informative. But now, guys, if you like this video, please click the like button, please click the share button. Don't forget our Patreon page to consider helping us or donate at Trekyards.com.
Yeah, we're always pumping out new content, and if you want to go see past episodes, please visit Trekyards.com or simply search on YouTube or Google for Trekyards. You'd be surprised by all the ships we've actually examined thus far, including with the designers. So until next time, I'm Captain Foley.
I'm Connor Cochins.
And I'm Rick.
Bye, guys. Kapla!